Hi students, welcome to HSC Earth and Environmental Science and Module 8, Resource Management. This is video number 4. We're going to start the little mini-series we're going to look at on mining, this time focusing on open pit mining. This little series is about investigating how mining sites affect the environment, including Aboriginal cultural sites, and examining methods of reclamation of the environment and those sites after mining operations cease. And this time, as I said, we're going to include our look at open pit mining. So hopefully this section will be just a little bit of a memory jogger for you. We did look at a little bit at these 3 different types of mining in our Year 11 course. So hopefully we can kind of build on the knowledge that we gained from that course and extend that a little bit. Now we're looking at the specific impact of different types of mining on the environment. So the First Nations people are the ones that were the first miners in Australia. They drew resources from the earth, but their mining only had a very small impact on the environment. It's when we've started to do very large scale mining where we've taken great quantities, tons and tons of earth out of our country, that we've actually started to create some of these problems that can be associated with different types of mining. And as I mentioned, in our Year 11 course, we looked at open pit mining, we looked at underground mining, and also onshore and offshore drilling as 3 different kind of methods for extracting resources from the ground. Now, the problem, of course, is that we don't really have time to revisit all of these in a lot of detail. So what we want to do is focus not on the mining method itself, but on some of the environmental implications of each of these different types of mining, and also, very importantly, on the types of rehabilitation or reclamation that can happen following the life cycle of a mine. So firstly, we need to look at the environmental impact of open pit mines. And as a reminder, we are talking about surface mining techniques. So we're talking about opening big holes in the ground. These are the most obvious kinds of mines a lot of the time, because you can actually see these big scars that are on the surface of the earth, and usually all of the mining operations that are happening within them. In terms of strategic minerals, surface mining is probably the most common method of mining for these types of resources. The biggest problems with them is that often the concentrations of the key minerals are very small. And what that means is that large amounts of the ore need to be of the rock need to be mined in order to extract just that small amount of actually economically valuable material. So if we think about ores as being the rocks that have some economic value, then when the concentrations in the surrounding rock are very small, we need to remove large amounts of rock in order to get that small amount out of it. The other thing too is that often what we're trying to do is we're exposing often quite deep layers of rock that have lain there and not been disturbed for some considerable period of time. So that creates lots of additional or side problems associated with open pit mining. Crushed rocks can also release radioactive elements, especially in areas where we're mining things like uranium. Fibrous asbestos-like minerals, and we know that can cause some significant health issues, and or metallic dust. The other thing is that during the separation processes, we're creating these slurries, so what we call residual rock slurries, which are just mixtures of this rock that we've crushed and also liquid water usually, and these end up as tailings, so they're kind of the bits that are left behind. And often the tailings are the things that are the real problems, because the sorts of things that can end up in the tailings can create problems in the environment long after the mine has ceased to operate. Toxic and radioactive elements from these particular liquids can also leak into the groundwater and perhaps even the surface water during rainfall if they're not properly contained. The Ranger Uranium Mine is one area in in the Northern Territory, not too far from Kakadu National Park, and there's concerns for a good rehabilitation process for that mine, which is due to be completed in about 2026. And the concern is, of course, that if we don't rehabilitate the area correctly, then some of those toxic elements may end up in the groundwater and could cause some damage to the populations that rely on that water in the Kakadu National Park. So that leaves us to talk about open pit mining reclamation. Now, reclamation is about creating useful landscapes that meet a variety of goals ranging from the restoration of productive ecosystems ecosystems to the creation of industrial and municipal resources. If we're talking about global best practice, then the idea is to create a landscape after the mining processes that can support some future use of the land. This is often for cropping, for grazing livestock. Sometimes it's about conservation, and other times it's actually about trying to restore the natural environment. So looking at the natural, some attempt to try and return the land back to its natural form. So these are all, I guess, different goals of the process of reclamation. The problem with open cut mining is that these sites have a very large footprint on the land. They create great scars, and therefore there has to be a lot of work put in order to try and restore these mines after the mining operations have ceased. It's only been fairly recently that mine reclamation was actually a regular part of modern mining practices. It wasn't part of the law until about the 1970s. So there were no specific environmental regulations placed on mining companies to actually do anything with the land once they had taken their full use out of it. One interesting case study that we can look at is Sunny Corner Silver Mine, which is not too far from Bathurst in New South Wales. In about the 1890s, or at least the 19th century, leading into the early 20th century, this was a silver mine that was worked quite continuously through that time, quite successful in mining. And you can see, obviously, from 1899, we don't have beautiful colour images like we do today, but you can see just how much of a scar this whole process was leaving on the land as a result of this open pit mining process. But the processes of rehabilitation and trying to restore to some sort of level of usage the land around the mine, you can see a more recent photo of the same area, and you can see some of the attempts that have been made there to try and return the land to some sort of a usable form. So that's the first in our little series of mining on open pit mining. We're going to have a look at the other two types in subsequent videos. Thanks for watching.